Good evening, everybody. It is good to be with you on what turned out to be a very tragic day. So, I just wanted to hop on here and basically reflect. I have a couple notes, but really not much on this Charlie Kirk assassination. So, first, I want to start off, of course, by offering my condolences, prayers, and thoughts to his family, his wife, his two kids, his friends, everyone who knew him. Absolutely heartbreaking. Very hard to watch what happened today, and it is very hard to consider that it happened. So, want to start out by recognizing their pain and their anguish. It's hard to put yourself in those shoes. Also, coming on the heels of the video going viral, the killing, I suppose, was a week or two ago or three at this point of that young Ukrainian refugee um, that took place in Charlotte, didn't it, in North Carolina? Her name was Ariana Zarotska. If you're watching this on X, then you're certainly familiar with that video. It's like, how much can we take? You know, so a very dark period for the people of X, for normal people just trying to live their lives in peace. So yeah, I thought it was important, but this Charlie Kirk thing. So yeah, that was horrific and noteworthy. I mean, it's like, how could there be another killing that already superseded that in terms of horror and meaning in our society? How could it be that a young, defenseless, innocent woman getting stabbed? I mean, I don't want to be too graphic, but if you haven't seen that video, let's just put it this way. It's what's particularly horrific about it is the way that this young girl looks into her killer's eyes, presumably unaware that she had even been fatally stabbed in the neck. That's how quickly and violently it happened. But there was just enough time for her to look into his eyes with fear and confusion before she sloughed off and died. So forgive me for the image, but it was hard to watch. How could it be that a day, not even a day after that video went viral on X? Excuse me, I'm going to take another sip of tea here. Normally, I'm in a good mood when I say sip of tea. I'm having my sip of tea because I like doing the podcast, but this is tough. This is brutal. How could it be that less than 24 hours later, a new video has taken its place? And so, for anyone who doesn't know, if you're living under a rock, Charlie Kirk, famous, so famous that he just made it to South Park, right? A couple of weeks ago, they parodied him. Don't go blaming South Park for this. This is not their doing. This is not their fault. He's a public figure. He was in the metaphorically, he was in the crosshairs for parody, no doubt about it. But no one should ever be in the crosshairs of a gun, guys. I said to my guests on Monday in the inaugural episode of this podcast, he asked me, so what pushed you over the edge to vote for Trump? And I said it was the assassination attempt and the Kennedy endorsement. When you try to take someone off the political chessboard violently, that's a message. That's a powerful indicator. And so for me, I was already feeling a certain way, and so that really pushed me over the edge. So point is, this is going to have reverberations for a long time. But anyway, I'm not sure where I was, but so let me refer to my notes. Yeah, there's so many things I want to get to and plan on getting to in this podcast. This is not how I was planning on doing the first solo episode, but here we are. Oh, I think I was telling you guys what happened. So Charlie Kirk, world famous, South Park famous, young, 31 years old, two young kids, beautiful wife. This guy, and I learned a lot about him today in all the news coverage that I heard. What did I know about him? He's a guy who speaks and connects with the youth. He goes around doing the college campus tours, and has conversations with college students, lines them up. People line up and crowds form to hear him have dialogue with people who agree with him and people who don't. And it's a very positive thing for this country. How could you say, no matter what Charlie Kirk believes on this divisive issue, that divisive issue, how could you say that someone who goes to college campuses on a regular basis and engages in dialogue is a bad person, is worthy of? So obviously what happened today is horrific. So he was doing what he does, and he had, so Charlie Kirk, what I knew about him going into today was a very influential, very nice family man who dedicated his life to has dedicated his life apparently, and I don't mean that in terms of the fact that he was killed today, but what I knew about him going in is this is a guy who's dedicated his young life to this cause of rallying young people to vote for conservatives and to be conservative, by the way, not just politically, but to be conservative. You know, he was really, and he was, of course, a strong evangelist, basically, I think it's fair to say, a believer in Christ and a very big proponent of the message and spreading the message. So he wanted good things for people and he wanted good things for this country. And so that's about as much as I knew about him. I knew he had a reputation for being well liked. Just seemed like a good guy, you know? He just did. And a fighter. Oh, was he a fighter? And really smart. And there's a reason he's had so much success doing what he's been doing. Very, very talented, very, very informed, very, very passionate. And so he was doing what he does, and he was having an event in some school in Utah, of all places. And there's a crowd of thousands of people, and he's under his tent, and I guess it's called the "Prove Me Wrong" tour. And he did, tour stop number 953. Prove me wrong. If you disagree with me, apparently he would always say, if you disagree with me, go to the front of the line. Let's start there. I guess while he had all of his brain power, he wanted to give the people who he might disagree with an opportunity to get the best of them. So one question gets asked, he answered it. Apparently, it was about religion. It was about some dispute about. They had some dispute about religion. He was talking to a Mormon. Kirk was not a Mormon, so he has that exchange. And then the second question is asked. Apparently, the question had something to do with transgender ideology, whether it related to shootings is not clear, but the reports I saw were both ways. And I think before the question is even fully asked, a gunshot rings out. And sorry for the graphic image here, but the bullet struck Charlie directly in the neck, and blood immediately spurted out. He immediately sloughed into his chair. It was a kill shot in front of all those college kids, in front of the world, right, with all the cameras. This guy's a big. He was murdered. There was some confusion about who the suspect was. They think they've got them now, thank God. Looks like the shot came from a roof, high-powered rifle. So that's what happened. And what I learned today about Charlie with all the eulogies is, and by the way, Fox News did a wonderful job with the cover. I don't know how Will Kane, I don't get to usually listen to news during the day, but I did turn it on, and I don't know how Will Kane got through his broadcast, and everyone did a phenomenal job. But yeah, so Charlie Kirk was killed today, was assassinated. And as the eulogies, they started off as just tributes in prayer, praying for his recovery, and then eventually became eulogies, essentially. But when Trump announced it, how profound is it that Trump announces your passing? It's the president of the United States personally. This guy knew everyone in that administration. And I'll get to this in a few minutes, but there's a strong likelihood, I think it's fair to say, that Charlie Kirk himself probably would have been president one day. So this is a big day. What I learned throughout the coverage is that Charlie dropped out of college when he was 18, or he didn't go to college. I mean, this guy was on a path from the beginning. And I so admire people with that kind of certainty. Look, I mean, I never had it. I was always searching for truth, searching for political identity. That's still what I'm doing, even though I've rebranded. But this guy had vision, and he had it from an early age, and he was going places. And that's why I really don't think it's a leap to say that with his connections and with his influence and with what the way he carried himself and his personality, I mean, this guy was going to be a freaking president. He was 31 years old. And if you're watching my podcast, you're well familiar with Charlie Kirk. It's hard to imagine the influence he had at the age he was. So that's about what I learned about him, is that he was on this warpath from the beginning. So I admire that. And look, it's not to say that I agree with him on everything. Of course, I wouldn't. I mean, it would be very strange if I did. But I do admire his faith. I admire people of faith. I don't. I like the way he went about it. He was proud of it. He talked about it. He wanted you to know the good news, and he wanted you to uh, respect a country and respect yourself, even if maybe you didn't convert to his religion. That's the sense I got. So he wasn't one of these guys saying, my way or the highway. He was just saying, isn't this a great way to be? And he was practicing his God given right, I would go as far as to say, as an American, and doing it the right way. So this is just horrific. So was he an inspiration to me? Well, hell yeah, he was. He didn't inspire me to start my initial podcast, Searching for Political Identity. I wish I could say that he did. It would have made a lot of sense that he did. It would have made perfect sense. But he didn't. I didn't know who he was. I didn't even know who Chris Rufo was, the big anti-CRT crusader. See, I was studying critical race theory in 2021 and 2022 in my final year of law school, and starting to realize, building off the conversation I had with Ryan on Monday about originalism, things you learn earlier on in law school, I was beginning to realize, okay, I am shifting. Either the ground's shifting or I'm shifting. Either way, I'm shifting this way. So it so easily could have been that Charlie Kirk, that I discovered Charlie Kirk and continued to drift that way. But I didn't. I didn't even know Chris Rufo. I actually began to drift that way on my own throughout my own experience in law school. And so he didn't influence me to start on my journey, but once I was on my journey, and I couldn't even tell you if I was already a Trump, because remember, I was doing that podcast for 4 years, and it was only last year that I became a Trump supporter. So I couldn't tell you if I knew of Charlie even before I became a Trump supporter or not. All I can tell you is that when I became a Trump supporter, I started to become very familiar with Charlie's work, or as I was becoming one, I did, and I had a tremendous amount of respect for the guy. I'm like I said, always doing his thing the right way, and when I say the right way, I mean with cheer, with words, and look, I'm sure he had controversial takes. I don't want to speculate on what those might be because I just if there's ever a time I don't want to put words in somebody's mouth. But let's assume that he's taken a few controversial stands, and maybe he's even gotten a few wrong. Let's assume that because he's a human being. Was a human being. Um, I mean, what happened today? Obviously, I mean, I don't need to say it. Obviously, what happened today is unacceptable, but it happened, and so the question is, where do we go from here? And part of me wants to say, look, we're like Greg Gutfeld said it best. People say he said, "quote What do you do in a situation like this?" And he answered his own rhetorical question on air earlier. He said, "You do more of what you already do." And that's a great answer. And that, on one hand, I think is what we'll do. I don't want to say that means we'll shrug it off. That's not what it means. It means we're going to do more of what we do. We're going to honor him in our own ways by doing more of what we do. And maybe you're a free speaker on the left, but you're going to do more of that, right? And so it's going to be a big net positive. On the other hand, let me take a sip of tea here. On the other hand, you go, could this actually, you don't want to speak it into existence, right? But could this actually be the precipice for a hot second civil war? Now I'm going to do my best to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't think it's gonna happen, but I've been saying this on X all day since we got the news. Don't discount the effect that this is gonna have on this country. This was not a nobody. This was a very influential person. And as much as I know him, I'm 35, as much as the mainstream media knows him, as much as the conservative movement knows him, the youth that was inspired by him knew him best. I mean, if there's one thing a person who wants to make an influence on the world covets, it's influence on the children. And he had that in his pocket, and he had it in a very genuine way. And he was a good guy. So it's a real loss. It's a real loss. It's a loss for the country. And maybe you don't agree with his point of view, but it's still a loss for the country because not only did what he believed in take a big hit today. No, you know what? I take that back. What he believed in actually got a booster shot today, sadly, right? Because he's now martyred. So what he believed in got a booster shot, but America's got a big fat black eye today, and that's putting it nicely. What happened today was hard to watch, hard to believe is real. I mean, he wasn't the president, but he wasn't that far from the president. Can you imagine if they had podcasts back when JFK was killed, right? Or Martin Luther King Jr. It's just horrific, guys. Let me see if I have anything else to comment on. Where do we go from now? Yeah. Well, hopefully not violence. Um, but understand that you're going to have a lot of people who are asking themselves, and I didn't want to make this too political. Now, obviously, it's an act of terrorism. It was a political killing, so like it or not, it's political. But you don't want to, be divisive about it. However, understand that there are a lot of people who are good people, who are rational people, who are smart people, who are calm people, who are asking themselves the question, do I need to be violent to protect myself? You know what I'm saying? People are asking themselves, is this the left? So is it fair to impugn this action onto the left as a whole? You know, obviously not, right? I mean, and I've been so divisive on Twitter over the last year. I've been trying to get away from it. I've been trying to get away from this. The left are violent, TDS afflicted moron stuff because I don't want to believe that that's the majority of them, and I don't. So I know it's not fair to impute this onto the entire left community, but a lot of rational people on the center and on the right are asking themselves, "I- is this connected to leftist ideology? Is the stabbing of that poor woman on the train or subway connected to leftist ideology?" And a lot of those people already believe the answer is yes. So such an action today, such an event, the effect that it's going to have on that conversation and that dynamic, I think is really important to keep in mind. We are headed for some sort of reckoning in this country. Hopefully, it's just a double down on the best parts of ourselves and a defeat of evil, right? But we were so close to something really bad last August, 2024 in Butler. And, it's a good thing Trump survived that. And again, like I said, Charlie Kirk wasn't the president, but he was in line to be. Okay. And so it's a heavy ass moment. I mean, think about it. This guy he just made it to South Park. And we saw his violent demise. Well, I guess my last comment is this. Like I said, he's not the reason I started podcasting, but he was an enormous influence on me. He was an enormous influence on me to speak out that it's okay. And I knew this, right? But to see a guy younger than me, doing it the way he did it was an absolute inspiration. And I'm telling you right now, I don't want to die. I don't have a death wish. Um, I like doing the podcast. I feel like at times I have an interesting perspective. So, and by the way, I would like to have a career in broadcasting of some kind. So I'm exploring that. I'd love to be able to quit my day job, frankly, but I don't want to die for this. I'm not going to say that I do. You know, would I censor myself before I took a bullet to the head? Probably, probably. I don't know, but probably. But I'll tell you what, Charlie Kirk was assassinated today, speaking to college students, and I'll be damned if I'm going to do anything but move forward with my effort with the Brian Escow show, which is to continue exploring my political identity, to continue to explore my religious identity, just learn about who I am, try to be a good example for people, try to bring people together, but be honest and realize that you got to take a stand. You got to take a stand. You can't be a fence sitter. No one likes a fence sitter. But I'll be damned if I'm going to stop now. I wasn't planning on stopping. In fact, I just launched this new show. So this is not motivation that I wanted, but it is motivation nonetheless to, it's because I am on his side of the aisle at this point. I don't, I can't imagine that I would, he courted controversy, I guess, but I guess the thing is, I can imagine myself getting to a point where I'm courting controversy and, I don't have delusions of grandeur or anything, but in principle, this makes a podcast host who's interested in free debate and civil discourse and improving the relations between the two sides in this country. It gives a guy like me or a gal, right? Pause, moment to pause and say, but no, not going to stop me, right? If I ever stop doing this, it won't be because I'll tell you what, I don't want to die for it. But if I ever stop doing it, it's not going to be because I was scared into it. That's just not how I am. And Charlie Kirk was that dude. Um, and it's just so awful that he couldn't, they didn't want to defeat him. They couldn't defeat him with their words. It's just so awful. It's such a condemnation on that person and maybe a wider movement on the left. I don't want to go there yet. Let's all calm down. But that person clearly revealed that what they believe in is inferior and that they were inferior. So whether or not you believed in what Charlie believed in, you better have believed in his right to say it. And that's all he was doing. That's all he was doing. It's not how it should be. It's a very dark day. And I'd like to finish this by just once again offering my sincere condolences and prayers and thoughts to his family and everyone affected. I will see you guys tomorrow. I have a show for tomorrow. So I'll see you then. Until then, be well and take care of yourself. Be careful out there and count your blessings. All right. I'll see you tomorrow.